As already discussed about the superposition principle leads to the occurrence of stationary waves, which we are going to discuss beats and interference. The interference would be discussed in class 12. Here we will discuss what are the stationary or standing waves. When two progressive wave trends having the same amplitude, same frequency, moving in opposite directions superimpose on each other, a new set of waves is formed. Those waves is called as stationary or standing waves. The waves can be either longitudinal or transverse. When those new set of waves is formed, they do not propagate in the medium, neither there is the transfer of energy in the medium. When the stationary waves or standing waves are formed, there are the points which are permanently at rest. Those points are called as nodes, and there are points which have got the maximum amplitude. Those points are called as antinodes. We can take an example as we have standing waves of longitudinal and transverse nature, organ pipes. In organ pipes, longitudinal stationary waves are formed, and in the instruments like the sonometer, the transverse stationary waves are formed. Let us discuss about the formation of stationary or standing transverse waves on a string tied on both the ends. Here we will take a progressive wave that travels in the plus x direction, and when it reaches the other end, it gets reflected from a denser medium, so there should be no phase change. We will see how stationary waves are produced by graphical method. Solid black line shows a progressive wave traveling in x direction, and the dotted black line shows the reflected wave that is reflected from a denser medium without the change of phase. Now, these two waves, the reflected wave and the progressive wave in the x direction and the reflected wave in the negative x direction, superpose on each other, and by that superimposition they lead to the formation of the stationary or standing waves. The stationary or the standing wave is shown by a blue line here on this board. Now, at t is equal to 0, when the wave travels, when this solid black progressive wave travels in x direction, it gets reflected from in the negative x direction. It gets reflected from the denser end in the negative x direction, and those superpose. We can see when t is equal to 0, the crest of the progressive wave in the x direction falls on the crest of progressive reflected wave in the negative x direction. So when these two waves superpose, the crest falls on crest. It leads to the increase in the amplitude. When it leads to the increase in the amplitude, the stationary wave is shown by the blue line, having antinodes A1, A2, A3 and A4, and the number of nodes are fixed here, that is N1, N2, N3, N4 and N5. The nodes are the points which are permanently at rest. Now let us take when t is equal to t divided by 4. When t is equal to t divided by 4, each of the waves has traveled lambda by 4. As in t is equal to t, a wave travels a full wavelength, that is equal to lambda. Now, when t is equal to t by 4, this wave, this black, solid black line, the wave that is progressing in the positive direction has traversed lambda by 4. So, this point comes at this point. So, this much distance is lambda by 4. Similarly, as this reflected wave comes in the negative x direction, it has also traveled a distance of lambda by 4. So there is a lambda by 4 addition here on this wave. Now we can see that at t is equal to t by 4, the crest falls on a trough, the trough falls on a crest. So overall, when they superpose, they lead to a wave having 0 amplitude. That is shown by the blue solid line. When t is equal to 2t by 4 or t by 2, that means the progressive wave in the x direction has traveled lambda by 2, and the progressive wave, reflected progressive wave in the negative x direction has traveled lambda by 2. So the waveforms are this lambda by 2 addition, this lambda by 2 addition on a solid line, and this lambda by 2 addition on a dotted line. So we can see that from t is equal to 2t by 4, the crest falls on the crest and the trough falls on the trough. So the stationary wave is produced of double the amplitude, that is shown by this blue line. Now, when t is equal to 3t by 4, that means each wave has traversed a distance of 3 lambda by 4. So the waveform becomes like this. Here it is lambda by 4, lambda by 4, lambda by 4. So 3 lambda by 4 addition on this line, which is here, and 3 lambda by 4, that is lambda by 4, lambda by 4 and lambda by 4. 3 lambda by 4 addition of distance on this dotted line when t is equal to 3t by 4. From here we can also see that the crest of one wave falls on the trough of the another. That means the stationary wave produced in this case has got 0 amplitude, which is shown by a solid blue line. So in this way, the stationary waves are produced, and this is the way it is shown in graphical method. Hope you understood.